absolute truth statement through science.
But it's that nothing can be true, not just I don't know. This sounds contradictory to me.
It's a contradiction if I said it's absolutely true that there are no absolute truths. That's a contradiction. It's saying that it is absolutely true that there are no absolute truths in science is not a contradiction. Because the way that I arrived at that absolute truth is not scientific, it's philosophical.
It doesn't matter how you arrived at it, it's still a statement about science, making it scientific.
I still don't see the contradiction because the absolute truth statement is not scientific in of itself.
I actually believe that we're taught when we're young that nothing's impossible, but I don't believe that. There's plenty that are impossible. That's my opinion.
You were saying earlier.
Oh, I thought those were breadsticks for a minute. It's just like a lady's long wrinkly fingers.
Jewelry.
So, Ethernet, you got anything to say about this?
Gravy.
Apparently, the statement that there are no absolute truths in science, or it is absolutely true that there are no absolute truths in science is a contradiction.
No, that's following a straight line. It's just saying it's true that there's something that's true.
What you guys were talking about
It's not saying
earlier.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to seek clarification on what you were saying earlier about people not believing in truth. Something about
What?
you use something that isn't true, or something about that. That was interesting to me. And I know you've moved
There
on.
are false beliefs. There are false beliefs that promote survival under the evolutionary outlook, but I'm saying that there are also true beliefs which promote survival. So there's no contradiction to say that evolution doesn't select for survival entirely. It could also select for truthful beliefs which promote survival. That's what I was saying.
Can you give examples of truthful, false beliefs that promote survival?
Religion.
Right.
No, in all seriousness, false beliefs that promote survival. Any moral statement in regards to why it's good to procreate from a moral perspective, that's a false belief. I'm an error theorist, so I hold that moral propositions are false, all of them.
Well, false in the sense of not benefiting the individual? Is that what you mean? About
no,
it being false?
False as in not true. False as in that it fails to correspond to reality. That's what false means. That something, a statement, a proposition does not comport with reality.
Right, and you're saying, what were you saying about procreation? That it's false, that it's a good thing? Is that what you're saying?
The belief that it is morally good to procreate is a false belief.
Why is it false? Because you might produce bad children who are criminals and that kind of thing?
Because it's a moral proposition. Because it's a moral proposition, and all moral propositions are false.
How so? Why?
It's pragmatic. It's pragmatic to say that's morally good to procreate, because it just enhances people want to generate future. It's evolutionarily pragmatic, but it's a false belief. The moral proposition in and of itself is not reality.
I don't see
It's
how
just
it is
describing
false.
a prescription. It is false. Does the statement you ought to procreate, is that statement something that corresponds with reality? Or is that just a mere prescription?
Well, it's a command, I guess. So orders can't be right or wrong. They just are.
Commands, yes, but commands are not, yeah, exactly. They no, commands aren't truth apt by definition. They don't fall under the category of being true.
Yeah,
A
the
command
quite a
is not a
different
proposition.
the different order of statements. Saying you
At
should
least
do
it's not a
this
true
and
proposition.
right, and it might not be true that you should do a certain thing. So I guess we need to question these things, but if it makes sense, then I guess we do it. Should we go to war? Should we declare war? And we're told to trust our leaders, or our leaders are taught to
Okay.
be trustworthy.
Okay. There's still a lot of beliefs that we can think of that doesn't have to be that example, but they fall under the category of promoting survival. But my my whole point was is that truth can also select for survival to some degree. Like our understanding of mathematics has enhanced our survival over time because we've adapted truth in mathematics, applied it onto other things that enhance human survival, like technology, the creation of computers. All of that is going to be contingent upon our understanding of the truths of mathematics. So there is no conflict between truth and the promotion of survival. It's just to the degree in which they can be in harmony with one another.
Mm-hmm. So for an
So
individual, it might be.
Plantinga's argument against naturalism fails for that reason.
Sorry, whose argument against what fails?
Alvin Plantinga's evolutionary argument against naturalism.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that, but I get it that while truth is useful to us, telling lies can also be useful. But
Yes, false beliefs can also be useful. Do agree.
yes, and telling
But true
lies is.
beliefs are also useful. So there's no contradiction between what is useful at an existential level, what promotes survival, and what is a true belief. There is no contradiction. You can have true beliefs which also promote survival. They aren't necessarily in conflict with one another, even assuming that naturalism and evolution are true.
Well, and if you want to understand reality, you want to know the truth of it. So you're not going to tell lies about reality to understand it.
Yeah, because that would confuse people, and that is, well, unless you want to confuse people for a good reason.
Sure.
But there is this idea that there's always an exception to every rule, isn't there? We are forbidden from killing,
I
but
don't
there
see
are
that
certain
being
exceptions in which it is permissible or even required to kill. For
Right,
example.
but that's more into an argument on universalism about moral statements. We aren't even talking about that. We're just talking about whether we can know our properly basic beliefs as true and not just promoting survival value. I'm of the belief that there are certain true propositions which are not just true in of itself, that these propositions can also be applied for the promotion of survival.
I mean, we could say it is true that religion promotes survival, so we better get ourselves one ASAP. That would be a true proposition.
Yeah. What about religions that promote sacrifice? Is that survival?
Human sacrifice. Well, it seems unnecessarily divisive, and it's going to upset people. And ideally, you want a religion that makes people feel happy and safe. So human sacrifice is probably not the one to choose.
Religions, but the beliefs in most religions, especially the Abrahamic ones, don't necessarily value human well-being and happiness. I don't know what you're talking about. They aren't pragmatic in the same sense that you're using the word.
Oh, in what sense am I using the word? I'm not. I'm not sure which word you
It's
are.
pragmatic because you said it's pragmatic because it makes people happy and safe. I think that's what you
Oh,
said.
yes, the
And I'm
utility.
saying that that's not even the utility of religion is that from a certain perspective, depending upon what your values are, it quote unquote straightens people out. Straightening people out doesn't necessarily lead to them being happy. So you have a misnomer there.
Well, people might be happy briefly and then be unhappy later. So I guess you just.
No, religion makes you happy insofar as you're a puppet that likes its strings. That's it. I mean, religion doesn't have to do anything with human happiness. It has to do with trying to please someone which transcends your existence altogether. That's it.
But sometimes the things that they tell you not to do um, are a good idea not to do. So it could be said that it's for their
Like,
own protection in the same way that a parent might forbid the child from, um, running across the road without looking both ways. So, so it could be said that the rules
Also,
of
no,
religion are designed to protect us from ourselves and each other, such as forbidding us from killing and stealing and that sort of thing.
well, I mean, even without religion, you could, if you're worried about that so much, I mean, you could just have a state that just enforces that, right?
Well, yes,
I don't
you
see
can
why you would
forbid.
need the religious influence for that.
I suppose the idea of believing in God is that it would instantly put a policeman in our head and make us more likely to obey the law rather than obeying the law just because we don't want to get caught. I mean that is, presumably the worst reason for refraining from killing,
Mm,
stealing,
I
etc.
disagree with that wholeheartedly.
Why?
I think you're just creating the policeman in your head because someone convinced you that if you don't put the policeman in your head, you're going to burn. You gotta remember, most religions are fear based
Sure.
primarily. They aren't rational insofar as that these beliefs are true, right? They're just promoting fear onto other people
Well,
in
most
order to
laws,
espouse said religion.
yes, I mean most laws are about stick and carrot. You can give incentives to do a certain thing, but you can also give punishments
But
in order
but
to forbid
Claire,
something.
under secularism, you could justify laws in a different way. You could say that the laws are here because they are needed in order to promote human well-being, whereas the laws under some theocratic slash religious state, the only justification most of the time is that this just is because this is God's law, right? That's it. There's no informative explanation for anything.
Well, it's the idea of it being
And if
above
it and if someone
us.
says And if someone says, and this is how ridiculous it gets, if someone says that we are instilling these religious values because it is good for society, then most actual religious people will look down upon the person who says such statement. You know why? Because good under the theistic worldview specifically, I'm not just talking about people who are culturally Christian or culturally Muslim or culturally this and that. People who are actually theistic, they don't hold the good as that which is promotes the well-being of society. The good is that which God commands, that which comports with God. That's it. So it's the explanation just gets even worse and worse in so far as it's not even complex. It doesn't explain morality. It doesn't explain anything. It's just you're following the whims of some moody god. That's it.
Well, the idea is to show trust in him, so one obeys him, even though one is not quite sure what it's all about. And as an expression of humility and
Okay.
submission and
Sure.
trust and that sort of thing. But if it works for them,
And you can do that perfectly fine without a god. There's no contradiction. Could be you could granting that if you even let's say live a decent moral life, you rarely tell a lie, you don't steal, you don't murder, you're compassionate with your fellow man, all these things. There's no God in there. There's no mention of God in there.
well,
I don't
I
see
think
the
I think
issue.
the
I don't know
necessity.
why you're so hung up with
I'd like to explain why I think it's necessary for maybe bigger things than just leading a quiet life. Because obviously, if you have to undertake onerous undertakings and do scary stuff like go to war or whatever's difficult, then probably believing in God would help you, would help see you through. Because if you think you're going to lose, you're not going to do it. If you think you're going to die, you're not going to do it. And most people, would prefer not to sacrifice, their life and limb to do something. And that means, well, people running away, if a country were invaded, nobody joining the army, um, and and it might be a good thing, I suppose, if not people are not warlike, but it would be a bad thing if they can't defend themselves when somebody invades them. So it's that we have to, I guess, consider all possibilities and why
Okay.
it is it helps
I
people
don't see how
take.
I don't see how any of that contradicts my position. My position is that you can perfectly have moral values without appealing to a god or being in an environment which instills religious values. And I think my take on this isn't very controversial either because secular societies by and large are happier, more they flourish more than religious countries when you compare countries that are secular to countries that are religious. Secular countries outperform religious countries almost in every category: human happiness,
You
human
are really talk.
well-being, quality of life, social mobility. It's like 10 to 1.
I don't know
I
how
have
these
I have
happiness levels are
the
measured.
United States. What do religious people have when pointing out, uh, you know, theocratic societies? Iran, Afghanistan, Saudi Arabia. You think that is going to be an issue for countries that are exclusively at a political level secular? I don't think so.
But things are happening to America now which maybe don't make Americans feel so good. Do you get that impression?
What things are happening in America?
Oh,
What do you mean by things happening in America? Expand.
Well, the kind of fall of Saigon thing in America, the bloody nose
Fall
that
of
America
what? Can
got
you
in
repeat that?
Afghanistan, the retreat, the misadventures of American imperialism, withdrawing because it hasn't worked for Americans. Running
Withdrawing,
Saigon,
away.
Vietnam.
withdrawing from Afghanistan is a necessity. I don't see what your argument is.
Well, it just means you shouldn't have been there in the first place. So it's been a policy
Yeah.
mistake, or do you think America should have gone in there?
Does that have to do with religion?
You're right, but what does this have to do with religion exactly?
Well, it's about a clash of civilization. So you have America that is not following any rules and not having any religion really, and fighting what you might think is a backward civilization.
Not having any religion.
Well, I don't think that invading Afghanistan was based on any religious reason, was it? It's about
No, that doesn't
imperialism.
follow. So
Hmm?
that's a red herring.
Why? I mean, well, it depends on what we're talking about, but I'm saying that there are countries
Talking
that
about
maybe
America being
are
religious
able to.
and America going to Afghanistan for.
Well, when two countries fight each other, isn't there some idea of ideological warfare? Basically saying, my communism is better than your capitalism. My fascism is better than your communism,
That's
or that kind of
That's a
thing.
perfect example. You just refuted what you said. You just said capitalism, communism. What is that? That perfect example you gave has nothing to do with religion.
Well, I'm actually saying that the difference between religion and politics is a distinction without a difference, because religions include moral systems include religions and as well as secular political ideologies. So
That's the compositional division fallacy.
what does that mean?
It's confusing elements of politics which are religious in nature with just politics itself.
Yeah, politics contains religion, therefore politics is all religion.
Well, no, I'm okay.
It's the same with
People do
reality
get
contains
angry about when they're
contingencies,
talking
therefore
about
reality is
politics
a
and religion,
contingency.
don't they?
I'm not angry. I'm not
Okay,
angry.
but I'm talking that
See,
about people
internet is not
when they
angry. All he's
disagree
pointing
on
out is that you're
politics.
committing a composition division fallacy. You're saying that politics contains religion, therefore politics and religion is a distinction without a difference, and I'm
Yes,
saying that's
I
fallacious.
am saying that because you really in the end can't disentangle the two of them, and when people argue
Well,
about politics
it's not to say
and
that.
religion, they seem to get angry for the same reasons.
It's not to say that you couldn't make the case that religion is a basis for all politics, but that doesn't mean every component of politics is religion. There's two different frames of work here.
Well, I would say that religion, which is which should be categorized as a system of rules, um, is more fundamental than politics, which is deciding on the interpretation of the existing rules. But if you want to change, if you want to change your religion, or you want to change your, something fundamental like we're going to be a communist country rather than a capitalist country, that would be similar to changing your religion because it's so fundamental that it will be considered a religious change rather than a different way of doing politics, which is kind of normal in the day-to-day running of your country. So
Claire, I'm Claire, I'm waiting for the rebuttal that secular countries outperform religious theocratic ones.
I were you waiting for that? I wasn't aware that I had to argue about that. You're
Well,
saying
I thought that you were going to follow up with a rebuttal because it felt like you were disagreeing with me on that point. I mean, are you?
I'm not sure what point you are referring to. I thought we were just talking about whether religion and politics are the same. I know we were talking about something else before, but I've forgotten what it was now.
My point was is that secular countries outperform religious theocratic ones in almost every category.
Well, you could say that these secular countries would be Western nations, and they would be liberal nations, and they would have a different way of categorizing things about, whatever. However they categorize it, I'm not sure how they do it. And they, maybe there's no real way of measuring people's happiness. I mean, we know that Jeremy Bentham had this idea of the greatest good of the greatest number, but eventually this utilitarian measure of what is good was eventually abandoned because probably he realized he couldn't measure people's happiness anyway, and also
Abandoned.
being happy at the time doesn't mean that it will be ultimately good for the country, because I mean there are lots of things that we might do that give us a good time, but which you might regret later, such as not revising for one's exams and partying instead. But at the time, people will see us having fun, but maybe later we regret it. So um, maybe that's not such a good measure of happiness if it's only short term.
Who said it? Number one, who said that the felicity calculus under utilitarianism was quote unquote abandoned? A lot of philosophers are utilitarians. I don't know what you mean by abandoned there. I think
Well, because
utilitarianism is still
it's
one
not
of the
particular.
stronger moral theories to date.
Well,
I don't
I
see.
just don't see
Now,
how
okay,
people can.
that's point number one. Okay, forget about that. That was my first point. My second point was why is to go back to the whole thing. My whole point was that religion primarily doesn't care about whether people are happy or not. It's just to instill fear based values onto society as a whole for a God that they cannot prove to be true.
In
Or at least they
order.
cannot even prove that the values that they espouse are true. So that's what theocracy primarily is invested about, not whether people are happy or not.
Well,
That's the point that I wanted to bring across. Now, do you have any refutations to that?
I'm certainly not going to refute that
It's
because
okay if you don't.
because the whole idea of
Okay,
religion
good.
is to make sure that people, you know, your group remains in existence by doing what is necessary to keep your group in existence, i.e., marry and have children and bring up the children properly so that you get you replace those who grow old and die, and those who replace those who grow old and die are not degenerate or inferior or have something wrong with them.
What does degenerate and inferior entail?
It means not being as good as their parents and their ancestors, such as
What does good mean? As good as, what does that mean?
it just means being able to survive in the world that they have to survive in. If they're sort of disabled or
They don't have to
retarded or
survive in the world,
hmm?
but they have to have anything.
Well, obviously,
That's
if
just
you want to
wonky
keep your
thinking.
group in existence uh, in a strong and healthy way, you have to, impose some kind of quality control of who members of your society can mate with, and the conditions under which they are allowed to have children, and how they should bring up their children. And if you say it's fine, do whatever you like, change your sex if you want, enjoy your gay marriage if you want, then stuff will happen to your society that will weaken you and make you degenerate and make you more vulnerable to your internal and external enemies.
Okay, so morality is that which keeps the group in existence?
And apart from others. So you're not merged with,
So genocide, if genocide keeps the group in existence, it's moral?
Well, it's probably not a good idea to genocide people around you, because if you start genociding other people, then they might genocide you. So I guess most ancient religions
That's
have some
never
idea of treating
sure.
people well.
Sure, there's a possibility where if I engage in genocide, I'll be dead, but I mean, there could be an instance where a genocide a certain group of the population, but I only do that because that population serves as a detriment to keeping my population in existence. So by doing this act of genocide, I would be keeping my group in existence. Now, is that more?
Well, different countries go to war and they play dirty, and bad stuff happens. But I guess if you want to be top nation, you will have to show good behaviour and honourable behaviour, because if you show yourself to be a country that keeps your promises, and then people won't fight you so much when you're invading them, right? But if they know that you're going to invade their country, you're going to kill every one of them, they're going to fight you harder. But if your imperialism is, you'll be living in your country, but it'll be run better with us around, then they won't fight you as hard. So having
Okay,
standards
fair
of
enough.
behaviour, you
Okay, I'm gonna go eat a taco now.
what? Sorry, you're not going to talk anymore.
I said I'm just gonna take a break. I'm gonna go eat a taco. I'll be
Oh,
back.
okay. I'll talk about something while you eat your taco. Um, I don't know if you heard the latest stream with Tom and these two Christians, and I just noticed that whenever he talks about God with theists, he always talks about, I don't know, potato and Bob the Builder, and I don't get it. And I was hoping maybe somebody will explain if Ethernet is not too busy eating his taco too.
I mean, the Bob the Builder thing is just like an alternative for theism. Like, what he's trying to say there is that theistic arguments are so bad that you can replace any conclusion that contains God with Bob the Builder and it's equally valid. Just defining your God into existence doesn't prove that he actually exists. Like, I could just define Bob the Builder into existence.
Oh,
Does
well,
Bob the Builder exist? No.
oh right. So it could be ghosts and leprechauns and pink unicorns and that kind of thing.
Right? Or a celestial teapot, right? It could be anything. Have you ever heard of Bertrand Russell's celestial teapot?
Yes, I have. So it's about creating an unfalsifiable concept. Yes.
Yes, an unfalsifiable hypothesis
It
that can neither be proven nor disproven.
and the same thing it is. Well, I mean, he's right then that you can create these unfalsifiable hypotheses, and but people don't
Right.
fight about
Like the
Bob the
God
Builder
that
or pink
Christians
unicorns for
believes
the
in.
sorry.
The God that the Abrahamic religions believe in. That's by definition, that's an unfalsifiable uh, being
Mm-hmm.
because it's necessary. It's either it is the case that it exists, or it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, and the thing is, it's so political because people fight about whether to believe in it or not, right?
uh, sure. I mean, religions fight about politics all the time.
Yeah, but that's just.
Like, yeah. Let me just put an example on how, whenever, so Donald Trump, right, in 2015, he said something about banning all Muslims from entering the United States,
Mm-hmm.
and the right supported that, but the left didn't support that. The left, the thing about the left is that there's a good portion of the left that isn't religious, which is like atheistic slash secular slash agnostic.
Mm-hmm.
But that portion of the left tends to defend Islam, right? And tends to white knight Islam for some reason, where any criticism of Islam or any criticism of Muslims is just taken to be Islamophobic by default,
Mm-hmm.
which is dumb.
Yeah, I
But
mean
I'm
the
just saying
left
what the
like
political dynamic
defending, you know,
is there between the left and
victims.
the right.
Mm-hmm. Yes, but that's the nature of the left. It white knights for minorities and women. That's how it gets its support, right? That's how it's the nature of the beast.
To some degree, but it doesn't have to. You don't have to pawn for minorities in order to gain political support. I mean, that's one of the problems with the Democratic Party.
Or the whole
Or it cares about
Democratic.
identity politics over actual politics.
Well, the whole thing is a marketing strategy, isn't it? Because the parties don't
Well, of course,
really.
yeah.
I mean, they don't have any principles. So what they do is basically scrabble for votes wherever wherever they can get it. So it's nothing to do with being principled at all. Maybe I'll talk about something. So what they do is it's opportunistic. It's like, well, whoever will vote for us, will say whatever it takes to get these people to vote for us, and it's based on no principle or anything, and that's why I think it's so dumb to carry on supporting a system like this, because what you're doing is you're just letting you're creating a parasitic class who doesn't care about the long-term national interest, and if you're going to have a political system, you might as well have one that says, well, we're going to govern in the national interest, we're going to care about the future of the nation, we're going to plan long term, we're not just going to do crazy stuff just to get your vote. And maybe it's time for Western nations to acknowledge that maybe that's not the best way to run your country. And I don't know if you think there might be a way of turning this into philosophy, because I'd be saying that this would come under the heading of moral and political philosophy, and ultimately, God is a big idea, so you can, maybe use God to give yourself authority for whatever you want to say, and maybe people will like the sound of it. Because I think people, want to know